Oh, it's gonna be great when it explodes. Oh! Dude, that's my dopamine rush. You see how I just cleared that entire room and like, boom. Wait, there it is. Oh. But too bad we're broken as shit, so we are not scared of him at all. What's up? I'm SYROBE, and before we start this video, I need to fix a mistake from my last video. In the last video, I said that we must use the Combat Frenzy Spirit Gem with the Resonance perk to generate infinite power charges with ease. That was correct, because both freezing and electrocuting an enemy will generate a frenzy charge that the Resonance perk will then convert into a power charge, which is the most efficient way to infinitely sustain your power charges, because it doesn't require a corpse like Profane Ritual, and it's automatic, unlike Siphoning Strike's manual power charge. However, despite knowing this, I kept saying shocking when I meant to say electrocute. Naturally, this confused a lot of people, because shocking is not the same as electrocute and they are not interchangeable either. I've streamed over 90 hours of Path of Exile 2 since early access released. I also create and test all my builds manually while editing every YouTube video myself. Every now and then there's bound to be some slip-ups, so I apologize to anyone that was having issues generating power charges. But I immediately gave everyone who stopped by my Twitch live streams the solution to this power charge issue. My Twitch streams are always where you're gonna get the most up-to-date information, especially for any corrections, updates, or improvements for all of my current builds. Now, let's explain the best ways to generate power charges at all levels. At the very start of your playthrough, you can get Killing Palm to execute enemies and generate power charges extremely early on. This is great since most enemies in Act 1 are relatively easy, but it falls off very hard very fast. Later enemies and bosses won't die as easily, so it's only good to generate power charges very early in your initial playthrough. You don't really have a better way to generate power charges until you get a level 7 skill gem in Act 2 for the first time, allowing you to get Siphoning Strike, which when you use it on a target that has the shocking debuff, will consume that debuff to generate guaranteed power charges. Even later, you'll get Profane Ritual, which is a level 9 skill gem that allows you to consume corpses for guaranteed power charges as well, but even this still has issues against bosses without any nearby corpses. Lastly, the best and most efficient way to generate power charges is by using Combat Frenzy, which is a passive buff that comes from a level 8 Spirit Gem, not a skill gem, and this must be combined with the Resonance Keystone from your passive skill tree. If you don't have the Resonance Keystone, don't use Combat Frenzy, and if you don't have Combat Frenzy, don't use the Resonance Keystone. You either use both of them together or not at all. So let's talk about electrocuting and how it differs from shocking. Combat Frenzy triggers when you fully freeze or electrocute enemies. By default, lightning damage builds up the shocking effect. Lightning damage will not build up the electrocute effect on its own. To allow this, you must either use a specific skill gem or even use a support gem that allows your lightning damage to build up electrocute debuffs. There's even some unique pieces of gear that can allow for this as well. There are many ways to easily fix and add electrocution buildup to your current build. Keep in mind, Combat Frenzy builds up charges from electrocuting enemies and freezing them, not just one or the other, but both freeze and electrocute will work to generate frenzy charges that are then converted with the Resonance Keystone for power charges that you can use with any skill from my Ice Lightning Monk build. My build is a hybrid build that deals lightning damage and cold damage, which means it's still possible to just build up charges by freezing enemies. Electrocuting enemies on top of this just makes stacking charges twice as efficient. However, I don't believe it's possible to proc electrocute and freeze at the same time. Through my testing, whichever one builds up first will activate, and if you were to try and activate both at the same time, it would just transition from freezing into the electrocuting debuff, chaining the duration of immobility for enemies, but not activating both debuffs at the same time, which is why combining ice and lightning is so strong, allowing you to Perma Stunlock enemies and bosses. Whichever one builds up first grants you a converted power charge, so it's good to have multiple statuses for a higher chance at getting a power charge in any situation. It will electrocute and vice versa. Again, there's a cooldown between charge generations, but you can usually just sit on a power charge for around 20 seconds, so by the time the cooldown is over, you can get another charge while your previous charges are still active, and using just one will actually refresh your timer. To fix the build's power charge generation, open up a level 5 skill gem or higher. Click the bow tab and you'll find electrocuting arrow. Craft that and equip any bow to use this specific skill. You aren't using the bow for damage, just to activate the skill, because electrocuting arrow will make you do a backflip over the enemy to shoot an arrow inside that enemy. This arrow allows you to build up electrocute on that enemy you shot using any source of lightning damage that hits them after the arrow is inside them will eventually trigger the electrocute debuff and grant you that converted power charge from Combat Frenzy. That arrow allows Tempest Flurry, Stormwave, and Charge Staff for my build to build up electrocute on enemies now, and is perfect for generating charges on bosses. Then you'll need a level 8 Spirit Gem. This is so you can finally create Combat Frenzy. However, be mindful of your skill gem level. A higher level skill gem requires more stats like Dex or Int to use, and it increases its mana cost. For example, a level 10 Combat Frenzy only goes from once every 6.1 seconds to 5.8 seconds, after being increased from level 10 to level 13. But then it also requires literally 36 more points of dexterity to even use it, which clearly isn't worth it. Just make sure you have the stat requirements before upgrading any of your gems. Either use both Combat Frenzy and Resonance together, or none at all. If you don't have Combat Frenzy and the Resonance perk unlocked together, just stick with Profane and Siphoning Strike for your power charges until you do. Now let's go over the full updated build once again. I already have an even better build made that I've been using on my Twitch live streams, but my newest, stronger build that I stream with is for what's known as mapping, or the endgame content that has insanely high tier endgame gear and even higher stat requirements. So if you're not there yet, or you haven't finished Act 3 twice, then this current video build is perfect for you. But if you are nearing the end of Act 3 in Cruel mode, or close to that, I'll have my new build up in my next build video, or you can ask about it early on my live stream. Here are my full lists of skill gems and support gems. I'll link them all in a max roll post in my description below, and show exactly how they all work instead with a combat guide, because a lot of people might use the right skills, but then they use them incorrectly. Tempest Flurry is your main basic attack. I use this to rapidly build up my Tempest spell as it attacks the fastest. Faster attacking means more Tempest spell uptime. You should always use Tempest spell whenever you have it. Don't force yourself to stack it if it's too dangerous, but always use it whenever it's up. If you can't hit it with a melee, you can still hit it from range. You can also hit the bell directly to stack charges, because applying freeze to the bell or shooting it with an arrow to electrocute it after will also generate charges as if it were an enemy. Shattering Palm is very slept on. If you want to instantly freeze your targets or bell more reliably, you need to start using Shattering Palm a lot more. Seriously, grab every enemy by the balls. It'll plant ice shards inside them, and if you hit that enemy, they'll explode, dealing massive damage, and apply 100% freeze buildup to any enemy around them. Stormwave is one of your main sources of DPS. If you can't get into melee range with Tempest Flurry or your bell, you can always use Stormwave. Stormwave also has a very unique behavior or interaction that I discovered through manual QA testing. It's pretty funny. So if you put your cursor very close to your character, it casts like this. But if you just move your cursor a little further away from you, it almost doubles your attack speed with it. I'm assuming this might have something to do with your cast range being further than your attack range. So the moment you cast outside of your attack range, the game somehow tracks and checks the distance of your cursor where you casted it, and somehow might increase the animation speed as a result. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I'm very proud of my discovery because it's very consistent. So be sure to cast Stormwave further away from you for max DPS, and make sure to use Freezing Palm first and start smacking them with Stormwave after. That's how I delete rooms full of enemies and turn them all into mist. Charge Staff is what you consume your power charges with and comes out of your Tempest Flurry and Stormwave attacks. Combat Frenzy, as we spoke about already, generates frenzy charges when you freeze or electrocute an enemy. The Resonance perk turns those into power charges, which we use to charge our staff, which makes it the Moonveil on crack. Using Shattering Palm enough times will activate Cast on Freeze. I cannot stress this enough, you should be spamming Shattering Palm whenever you can. Triggering Shattering Palm's explosion will also activate Herald of Ice. Shattering Palm will make enemies explode and deal mass AoE freeze buildup. Herald of Ice also makes enemies explode for even more mass AoE freeze buildup. And all of that stacks to build up Cast on Freeze, which even though it was nerfed, is still very strong. Do not let the Sorceress players fool you into thinking otherwise. Cast on Freeze will trigger after enough enemies have been frozen. Inside of it, you can put Freezing Mark to make enemies explode for 3 times the amount and even more AoE freeze buildup. And on top of that, if anything somehow survives, it'll cast a massive ice comet that can slam down twice. This build is extremely fun with near instant room clear, high melee DPS, and even more reliable range DPS to clear rooms with and melt bosses. Check me out on Twitch if you want an even stronger version of this build for endgame mapping content. And then for anything that you can't freeze, that's why we have the electrocuting arrow. The full skill gem list plus all my support gems I use will be in my max roll guide. Same with my passive skill tree and character stats. So here's a general overview. I am not an invoker, and I chose the chalupa, but either ascendancy works well with this build. You'll need at least 106 int and 83 dex to use every skill gem in my build. The most important nodes is this elemental cluster here, the resonance keystone here, which you should really prioritize first before anything else, as long as you already have combat frenzy. Don't get this if you don't have combat frenzy yet. And this entire quarterstaff tree up here at the top like this. Once again, I am live every day on Twitch. The full gem and each passive skill list is in the description. If this was helpful or if you have any more questions, be sure to check me out live here on Twitch. I've been SYROBE, and hopefully I'll see you on Twitch as I'm grinding for Twitch partner. Peace. Oh my god. Guys, we did it. We hit over 300 subs just now. Dude, that's crazy. I don't even have 3,500 followers. I have less than 3,500 followers. I just hit 300 subs, dude. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys are enjoying the builds and all the Path of Exile stuff. Thank you guys so much for all the subs. That is crazy. That is a huge milestone. We just hit 150,000 subscribers on YouTube and 300 subs on Twitch, dude. Thank you guys so much. Holy shit.